Shri Gurave Namaha. In this episode of Pariprashna, we will take the issue of depression. Recently, a person who is in the film field, he is a filmmaker and worked as an assistant director for many production companies, big ones, some of them. And he has developed symptoms of depression, and he has huge ambition. He wants to produce, direct and write films which deals with handling so many people, and there is lot of competition everywhere, and he is feeling very unhappy that he is not able to carry on in this field because of this depression that he has developed. And this is not the first person who came to me to study sadhana with depression. Almost 85% of the people who show interest in sadhana desperately are depression patients, and some of them are in a very acute condition. And even if I instruct them in doing some sadhana, basic sadhana, they will not be able to do it. Depression basically means losing the power to exercise your free will. That is the result of depression. So you get panic attacks, you get, you are demotivated very easily, and you become very angry, you are very impulsive, and you are not in control of yourself. You feel, you get a lot of sleep. So even if to do sadhana, they should have the power to exercise their free will. So if they are not able to exercise their free will, how can they do sadhana? Sometimes parents whose children bothered them with the depression, they bring their children to me to heal them. But when they are normal, or when they have these symptoms, they are at the beginning stages of depression, they don't bring them, because they are constantly pushing them towards attaining success in the material world. And they bring them to me in such a condition that I cannot do anything with them. So some of them, some people like this are now living in the mental asylum helplessly. So let us try to understand this phenomenon, and basically the phenomenon of disease itself, how disease comes and how disease turns into a chronic disease. And with the theory which I have been telling you in the past lectures, you will very easily be able to understand what is the root cause of all this. As I told you that when we identify ourselves with the body and the desires are produced, we have a natural tendency to go against the nature and fulfill these desires. Now my digestive system can only digest a certain amount of intake, and it can digest only certain kinds of food. But if I try to dump material into my body to fulfill my taste, and my digestive system cannot digest it, a conflict is created between what I am doing, my eating, and then the digestive system. And this conflict is expressed in the form of tender diseases. In Telugu they are called as, Indian language they are called as Taruna Vyadhi. Tender diseases in the form of feeling feverish or getting cough, sneezing and things like that. So when you get them, you should understand that you have gone against the nature. So you go to a doctor, and sometimes what happens is that because of the overload, the food is not digested. Then the doctor gives you, diagnoses it, and he gives you a purgative which you take, and then it cleanses your body, and then you go back and do the same thing again. But indigestion is not the actual problem. The cause of indigestion is the intake, and we are taking that kind of food, dumping that food because of the desire which is produced in the mind. So where is the disease? Disease is there in the body also, but it is there in the mind in the first place. The production of the desire, the tendency of the mind to produce desires against the laws of nature and then fulfill them in spite of knowing that they are against the laws of nature is the disease of the mind. And this disease is coming because, as I told you, that my intelligence, my buddhi gives me the knowledge that this material world is relishable. So the ignorance in the buddhi is the disease of the buddhi. And this ignorance is coming to me because of my identification with the body. So in ahankara, the identification with the body becomes my disease. So that is where the problem is starting, and the doctor is giving a purgative to heal me. So, but I am not going to give up my tendency to desire and fulfill that desire. So I am going to continue that. In fact, the more I relish, as I told you, I am becoming more greedy, and my desires keep increasing. And I try to go to different places and eat various kinds of foods in spite of knowing that there are a lot of toxins and they may harm me. So now this conflict, when it is not, it has to be resolved at all these levels. If it's not resolved, this conflict keeps on increasing, and it comes to a stage, a breaking point, which is when this conflict turns into a chronic disease like diabetics and blood pressure and all these kinds of things. In the mind, it is depression. And once you come to that stage, there is no return from there, mostly. And rest of the lives you will be suffering. The only thing that neither we can consume those things and we still have the desire, so we try to find alternatives for that. And then for whatever disease has been produced, it creates immense pain in us. So the rest of the life will be suffering. So in the case of mind, what is happening is that we have ambitions. We have huge ambitions. In the material world, everybody is taught to dream big and make it big. Not everybody has the capacity or the chances or is privileged to fulfill those dreams. But everybody is sold this idea of dream, fulfilling the dream. They give various examples. So you are dreaming big, but there is no possibility. So you have a lot of conflicts, and you become envious if somebody is moving ahead in the race, and your parents and others are insulting you if you are lagging behind. So all these things affect you. They create conflict in you, and then you become very angry, you depressed, and then you feel suffocated, choked. But if you don't heal yourself, if you don't understand what is the root problem of this, then it will lead to depression. And this is also leading to all the violence and many other things, the consumption of drugs, etc., alcohol, etc. In America, the example of which I have given you before, there is a lot of gun violence, there is a lot of drug addiction, and the depression is the fastest growing disease, not only in America, everywhere. And there are so many Nobel laureates in sociology, psychology, and in these fields. And they have many top 100 universities in America. But still, they have wealth, they have a lot of mental health care centers, but still depression is increasing, violence is increasing, drug addiction is also increasing. They are not able to control it. When a big episode of gun violence took place during the regime of Donald Trump, he posted a video of a video game which the children are watching. It is so gruesome, the violence in that video game is so gruesome, and he says this is the stuff which our kids are watching and which is resulting in the violence. But then why are they watching all these violent things? They really don't have answer to this. If they know why they are watching, then they should have created conditions for them not to have watch such things which will not result in this violence. The very fact that they are not able to solve this problem, it's become a menace for them. It shows that they are not able to understand why such violence is produced in them. Now, with the knowledge of Vedanta and Bhagavad Gita, which I gave you in our lectures, it's very easy for us to understand. You see, when the mind is producing desires for the kid, and the kid is not given the spiritual knowledge, he is sent to a school as a body which is producing desires. His body is a desire producing mechanism, mind. And in school, he cannot fulfill his desires. He is sitting there for 9 to 5, listening to teacher, doing homework and various other things which are against his desire. He doesn't want to do that, but he is asked to go there because unless he studies, he cannot go to university, he will not get a good job. So he will, with a very big dream to send their child to a good school, to a coaching center, to IIT, to America, they force their children to go to schools where they have a lot of pressure. And for a desire producing mechanism, this artificial imposition of staying in school for 9 to 5 becomes repressive. The system becomes repressive. Not only the school, every system for an embodied person becomes repressive. For example, if he gets educated, he goes into a job. And why is he taking up this job? Why he studied, got educated into some big universities and all these things? Because to get a good job so that he can live a luxurious life and fulfill all his desires. Basically, he is living in consumer capitalism. He is a consumer. So, but when he has to work and take all the pressure of competition in the corporate system, that becomes a repressive mechanism for him. And for a person who identifies with the body, he wants to enjoy every kind of opposite sex, but then when he enters into marriage, he has to stay with one person and he has to fulfill his husband duty. And that is also becoming repressive. So every system for an embodied person is becoming a repressive mechanism which creates a lot of violence in him. We go back to the child. The child who is experiencing this repression is developing a lot of violence against the parents and the teachers, and he cannot beat them up. He cannot resist going to school. And so after coming back, starts watching or playing these violent video games about which Donald Trump was talking. So he plays a WWF in which one wrestler is beating the other wrestler. So he is thinking that I am the wrestler who is beating the other person, and the other person is my parent or a teacher whom I am beating. And then he plays games where he is taking a gun, and if some enemy comes, before he shoots, he has to shoot him. And if he shoots him, if 100 persons come, and if he shoots the 100 persons, he wins the game. So he is playing these kind of violent games to fulfill the desires of violence against his parents and teachers which is produced in him, and also to forget this, so that he will be able to do the homework which his parents want him to do in order to top the exams and move ahead in the rat race. And because he is not resolving the conflict at the root level, this keeps increasing in him, and finally it produces depression in him, and he will lose the capacity to exercise his free will, and he acts impulsively. So when this power to exercise his free will, he loses more than 50%, that is what is chronic. He is helpless at that time. Nobody can help him. He helplessly shoots, he helplessly consumes overdose of drugs, and he helplessly engages in pervert sexuality and other things. So that is why there is no solution in the Western science and the science which gives the bodily knowledge. But in our case, in the case of Sanatana Dharma, in the case of people who are engaged in sadhana, those who are living in ashrams like us or those who are going to Gurukulas, they are also not fulfilling these desires. So living in ashram and going to Gurukula should also work as a repressive mechanism. But it doesn't work that way, because I am given the knowledge of Atma, so I reconstitute myself as Atma. The child who goes to Gurukula, he reconstitutes himself as the Atma, and when he is doing his duty of being a student, when I am doing sadhana and teaching others sadhana, for me, the more I do sadhana, as I told you in the last lecture, I start realizing myself as the Atma more and more, from 25 to 26 to 27%, and then my bodily identification comes down from 75 to 74 to 73, like this. So the more my Atma Jnana, experience of Atma interest, the more blissful I become, the more compassionate I become, the more love I cultivate, and the less bodily identification results in lesser production of desires, and whatever desires I already had, my mind was producing, because of the increase in my experience of Atma, they get dissolved. So the system, the very systems, all the systems of family, education and working in an institution which became repressive mechanisms because of the identification with the body, they become dissolving mechanisms. So the more I play the role, the more the desires are dissolved and the more I get empowered. For the other person, as he is losing the power to capacity to exercise his free will, a role playing or a job, small task given to him appears like a huge burden, because he lost his capacity to fulfill that. And it appears like a huge warlike situation. That is why for Kali Yuga, when Bhagavad Gita is taught, generally Upanishads are taught in an agrahara, in an ashram, under trees by the gurus. And the same Upanishadic Sara, the essence of Upanishad, is taught in the battlefield. Why this metaphor is given to us in Mahabharata? This is because in Kali Yuga, for those people who have capacity to produce desire is 75%, capacity to follow dharma is only 25%. For such a people, doing your duty, fulfilling your duty becomes a huge task. It's like a warlike situation. There are two identities in you. One identity, it is that you identify yourself with the body and it is producing desire. And when you are given an identity in an office as an employer, or in school as a student, or as a husband, now this role has a capacity to fulfill that duty only 25%. But the desire production is 75%. This is more powerful. So for this person to play the role, it's a huge warlike situation for him. So that is why Bhagavad Gita is taught in the battlefield. And Arjuna is shown, even though Arjuna is very powerful, is shown as if he is in depression. He says, I cannot do this, which means that he is saying that I cannot exercise my free will. I cannot play my role. And Sri Krishna in fact calls him a klaibya, important person. You are acting like an important person. Dhirastatra namuhyati. If you are a courageous person, you will not be attached to this. You will not act according to ignorance. You will not lose your courage to fight. So that is why he says, Uddhared atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadiyet. You should empower yourself. You should use your mind to empower yourself, and role playing is a means of empowering yourself. Now because you are identifying yourself with the body, you are getting disempowered, you are becoming impotent. So that is why he is asking him to reconstitute himself as Atma, as a solution to this klaibya, this disempowerment or depression, or the loss of the power to exercise the free will. So now he teaches karma, jnana, sannyasa and dhyana, which I told you in the previous classes, which are a means of, which are limbs of yoga, and which are a means of realizing yourself and realizing your relationship with the Paramatma. And the more you do your karma, the more you play your role by reconstituting yourself, it becomes a dissolving mechanism, and then you regain your power to exercise your free will. But if you don't do that, you keep on losing your power to exercise free will, which is happening in the material world. So there is no solution for depression with the material knowledge. Like there is no solution for any disease in the with the material knowledge, which keeps on increasing. So Bhagavad Gita can be considered as a book of self-empowerment. It has all the principles of regaining the power to exercise one's free will. Many of us may think that we are very motivated people, we are very successful, and hence we don't need any of this Atma Jnana or Upasana. We cannot say that, because we see in the world that many people who are very rich or very influential, superstars in different fields, are also suffering from depression. Everybody has depression in some percentage or the other. As long as we identify ourselves with the body, all the systems become repressive, and we may be very powerful at this time to tackle these conflicts and take the pressure. But gradually this conflict works on us, and our motivation percentage to exercise our free will gradually goes down. If you take a medical policy, the agent who approaches you conducts a medical test and he gets you a report. You might have observed that in the report it is said that you have 15% of getting diabetics in 10 years. You have 25% of getting heart attack in 20 years. So you have to do certain exercises in order to protect yourself. So similarly, if exams are conducted on us about depression, then we will get a report of how much of depression we have. And that is why everybody should engage in this upasana and then protect themselves from a future problem. And gradually we should cultivate our Atma Dharma, cultivate love, and try to get connected with the Lord and experience bliss. Instead of experiencing divine bliss by being connected to Lord Krishna, you imagine that people are suffering from depression and losing all their power, and then moving towards mental asylums or taking shelter of drugs and all these things, right? So I think I gave you some clarity about depression from our perspective and how upasana can protect us from all this. And in our next Pariprashna class, we will take another issue. Albeli Sarkar ki jai.